Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Talent Finders would like to welcome Rapid Transformational Therapy, RTT practitioner, and holistic coach and international best-selling author, Ailish Keating. So welcome, Ailish.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on, Karen. I appreciate that a lot.
So I would like to congratulate you on all your achievements. Can you share with us how your entrepreneurial journey started? What led you to where you are and what you're doing today?
Yeah, so I grew up in rural Ireland, and my dad was always kind of working on projects and so on and so forth. So I think I kind of got the bug from him. This is, back in the 70s and 80s in Ireland. And then when I went to college, moved to the States, and I was in New York, and I was living in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. I was working in corporate America and down at Two World Financial Center. And I was always felt a little bit constrained by being in an office cubicle. It just really
Yes.
wasn't used to how I was used to moving around. I could do it, but it wasn't it was like, oh.
It
So
wasn't natural for
it
you.
wasn't, no, it wasn't natural for me. No, and I'm always somebody who likes to move around. I'm kind of, I like to be moving. So that was challenging, but it was, great work and great people that I worked with. The company then I was working with was shutting down, and I was like, please let me go and give me money so I can start my business. So that's essentially what happened. Living in Williamsburg, if you're familiar with New York, Williamsburg has been the what's the word of it, the golden zone for expansion and creative types, and now development in the last 20 years plus in New York. It's been like the fastest growing, continuous growing neighborhood. But I lived there at the time before that had actually started. So it's easy to see we were heading into the city all the time to go out, and we're like, well, there needs to be more bar restaurants in this neighborhood. There was like 7 at the time. So we opened up when I finished working corporate, being Irish, obviously we do bars and stuff comes easy to us because that's kind of
Yes.
it's not actually, that strange. So I opened up a bar restaurant with a friend of mine, two friends actually, and that actually got to be very successful. And then soon after that, I started doing real estate on the side because I always seem to have at least two things on the go with work. I like to do multiple projects, but it's like anything. Me opening the bar, the idea just came. It's like, it's good to know your market. So that was an
Yes.
area that I was very familiar with, and I was very familiar with the neighborhood, and the demands were obvious to me because I understood that business quite well. So I think that was why it was a great start and a good project.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So, being in the coaching space, you're very focused on a niche area of speciality and your passion for entrepreneurs. So, can you share with our audience what rapid transformational therapy is and how the holistic coaching works together with RTT?
Certainly can. So as I've kind of matured over time, I got more into, the personal development and the personal improvement space. And with RTT, it was one of the treatments that I had found very, very helpful myself on my journey. So I trained in it. So RTT, it's a solution-based treatment, and it combines the most beneficial aspects of hypnotherapy, talk therapy, and neuro-linguistic programming and neuroscience. And it can give somebody extraordinary change in 1 or 2 or 3 sessions, from really deep physical, emotional, and psychological release from things that have kept them, stuck, held back. Reoccurring problems can often be resolved. So it can really rewire the brain easily. And it works very, very much on the mental and the emotional body. So I like to combine it with coaching, because we can eliminate some patterns that have been, most people can make progress if you eliminate the things that are keeping them stuck, right? Most
Yes.
people naturally have natural drive forward, but we have these conditions and tendencies and patterns and beliefs and blockages that will keep us doing the same thing over and over again. Once you can remove the causation from that, then you can make progress as in any area of your life. It's like there's a saying, how you do one thing is how you do anything. So if you address a problem over here in one part of your life, chances are is going to improve also in other areas of your life by default.
Yes.
So the holistic model is you really take the whole person in, and it really gets down to the core of where the problems, people call it root cause or many, many different things, but you really get to the root cause of the issue, and then you move it along. So it works in combination with coaching, because you can go in and you can actually do the reprogramming, the repatterning, the release. And then you can add on top of that, then you can add the steps for success, right? So it just works really, really well.
Yes. That's amazing.
Yeah,
So, obviously, being originally from Ireland, you lived in the US for 26 years. So, can you share with us more about this part of your journey and what was the motivation for moving to the US and what made you decide to return to Ireland?
sure. So I had graduated from Cornell Essex, which was I did a master's in Paris, and it was a college that it was run with Cornell, and it's called EMI. And I had met some friends in the States, and New York was generally like seen from most Irish people as being the capital of the United States, even though obviously Washington, D.C. is. New York was
Yes.
where it was happening. So New York had been very much in my, call it my subconscious mind, most of the time growing up as a place where a lot of people spoke of. I also happened to receive my green card at that time, so I had some familiarity, and then I had the opportunity to go there and, get work. And I also had some friends from college who were there. So I went thinking that, okay, I'll be there for 2 or 3 years and then I'll go and I'll do something else. But 2 to 3 years turned out to be 26 years, right? So,
Wow. Amazing.
but New York's an interesting city. You either love it or hate it for the most part. If you like to visit it, you will love to work there. Other
Yes.
people arrive in the city and they have to leave very, very shortly. So it just really either attracts people or repels people. It's very clear in that way.
Yes.
So then fast forward to, 2019, I had been working most of my life quite hard, a very, very kind of analytical and very much on the active do part of things. So throwing myself at stuff, trying to make it work, probably doing more physically and not processing stress and different things like that as I should have been doing in the process. And now as I know now and understand now how to work with it. So I became quite sick in 2019, combination of stress and burnout, really. And by April 2020, I was given a 2 to 6 month to live diagnosis, and it was recommended. A lot of the treatments and the stuff that I was doing, most of them weren't working. So it was really, things weren't looking so good. I didn't feel like I was going to that was going to be my outcome. But
Yes.
I also, my daughter, I'm a single parent. So if something had happened to me and I was in the States, what would have happened was my daughter, who was 10 at the time, would have ended up having to, losing her house, losing her mother, changing countries, having to move to Ireland by herself. That would have been really, really bad. And all as things were with me being sick and around, it would be worse with me not
Yes.
being there. Right. So I said, okay, I need to just move. And everything happened so quickly.
Yeah.
It's not like this was a slow progression. This was like, okay, wow, this is happening. And once I made the decision, then it was one of these things people often say with things like cancer. Often people say, well, what are you dying to get out of? Right? Is often this thing that people say. That there's a causation behind some of these things. And there's so many ways you can look at it. But in this way, I had wanted to move for years, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. I always felt like I was a little bit under pressure and things didn't line up. Once I made the decision, it's so funny how these things are. 2 weeks later, I was on the plane.
Wow.
It could just happen just like that if I just had. So it's amazing what we don't let ourselves do that we want to do because we're afraid to make a
Yes.
decision. We're afraid to commit to it. And once we commit to it, then all of a sudden everything else can be like, oh, you've made a decision. Let's line everything up back with this so to support you in your decision. But if you don't make a decision, you'll stay where you are.
Exactly. So what would you say some of your biggest lessons and learnings have been within your career? Maybe you've got multiple, but what stands out for you the most?
Yeah. In my earlier jobs, I would say you did, like when I was in more of, say, a corporate world or structure or almost anything, it's one thing to get jobs, but it's really, really important to plan out a career and to get mentors to help you do that so that you can actually have a trajectory and make progress. And you always have something that you're reaching for, because that even if you don't go for it, this idea of continually like letting yourself expand and having goals is so important for just for your engagement in work, for in terms of what you want to achieve. So I think that would be one thing. The other thing would be the necessity of continuous executive training and learning, regardless of if you're in a career or you're an entrepreneur. So often when, say leaving college, everybody leaving college, myself included, you think you know everything. And at the time you kind of do, but you don't.
Yes.
So, you go through later on in life. And as I look at a lot of my friends, in general, and it's really, really quite impressive. But this idea of continuous learning and improving of the skill set is huge, from anything from time management, managerial, executive, doesn't matter, marketing, doesn't matter what, even if it's not your field. It's good to learn about it. So then at least you know how to hire the people who are skilled in it. You know enough about it that you will make the right hiring choices, or you will know what to do yourself. And
Yes.
I'd say the last thing I would say is get into a habit of saving about 20 to, when you're young, get about 20% of your salary or more, put it into an account and develop this muscle right from the start, when the young people have a lot
Yes.
more cash available than you do as you grow along. And what happens is that muscle for saving becomes a little bit weaker as you get older, because there are more demands. You may have family, you may have additional requirements. So this habit of saving money from a very, very young age, I couldn't recommend it enough. And then learning how to make wise decisions with that as you go along.
Yes. I agree 100% because I think financial literacy is not really taught
No,
um,
it's not.
at school and institutions alike. And I mean, even just from a personal perspective, I just think it's so critical.
Yeah.
So you obviously touched on going through your own life-threatening experience. What was the turning point for you? And do you believe that going through this very serious challenge or challenging time, how did this influence you to where you are now?
Oh, it hugely influenced me. So it forced me to take a step back from efforting and working all the time, because obviously what I was doing wasn't working for me.
Yeah.
It was working for the companies and everybody else that I worked for, but it wasn't working for me. I was becoming depleted at the cost of something else, right? So
Yes.
something was out of alignment. When that happens, there was something that was just really out of alignment, and I needed to get back in alignment with that. And I had no value for the passive aspect of life before. Everything was active with me. Even my meditation was active, my yoga was active, everything was all, I think it's yang, all kind of, push, push, push. Very little time in the calm, in the or I think it was all yin, very little time in the yang aspect of stuff, the calm or the inner reflection, the
Yes.
listening to myself, and really what will be highest and best for me, not necessarily highest and best for everyone and everything around me. So that was really what changed. And then when I did recover and get better, I was like, okay, I'm given a second chance, an opportunity to do something differently. I'm going to choose differently this time, where I can really add value for, for people in the world without depleting myself in the process, right? So it needs
Yes.
to be something that serves both me and the people I work with.
Yeah, absolutely. So that leads me into obviously the coaching space, which is a very competitive industry. So can you share with us more about what makes you so different in your coaching style? And can you give us any examples of successes you've had with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the coaching space is a really noisy space, and there's a lot of amazing people there. Where I came to myself with this was I found that there was a big gap between promises and results. And
Yes.
and I get it. Quite often it's then put back onto the client if people don't get results. Well, you're not applying this correctly, you're not doing this correctly, you're not doing something right. And that's often quite true. You have to admit that, like, if everything starts and ends with us, then that there's definitely truth to it. So I became a much better student, right? I became really, really, okay, I'm going to do everything that they say. I'm going to make sure that it's not me as much as possible as I'm doing these things. So over time, I became a better student. But sometimes I still didn't get the change, even when I became the best student and I was doing this stuff. And I'm like, okay, there's something missing here. There's something that's incomplete, because I'm doing the things. I've been doing this for a while, and now I need to be seeing results. And I'm like, okay, there was a missing component, and the missing component that came up, and it was very, very much part of, now it's called it the foundation of my work, is the emotional component. A lot of coaches, a
Yes.
lot of programs just deal with everything mentally. And quite
Mm.
often you deal with emotions mentally. And the emotional body and the mental body are two different things. The mind and the emotions, one can process the other. But what I discovered was that my unresolved emotions are the energy behind a thing, and my unresolved emotions were impacting all of my outcomes, but I couldn't get to them, right? Because nobody had given me a system where I could, we'd all clear everything out and fix everything if it was easy and obvious, or even if it was hard and obvious. But if
Yeah.
it's not obvious, because the stuff is hidden so deep, it's becomes its own challenge. So during all of that, I was at one point between a rock and a hard place. And I'm like, I'm going to understand how this works. I'm going to come up with a process. I'm going to get to the bottom of this because I'm very solution orientated. And eventually I did. I come up with a process that I now call emotional alchemy. And I use that to resolve the emotions, which are very, very important because your emotional signature is what will impact every single relationship, every single effort, every single thing. And if it's important to you, you're going to trigger those unresolved emotions. So all you're going to do is get these. So something's important to you, it switches on your energy, you start to focus on it. And that aspect of switching on your energy and focusing on stuff, you'd be better off if you didn't think about it, actually. If
Yes.
you'd be better off and just say, okay, I'm going to put this out there. I'm not going to think about it. I'm just going to let it come to fruition. But if you're putting your energy into something and you're triggering those emotions, that's what was frustrating to me. The stuff that wasn't important to me, I would probably sometimes get great results. I'm like, oh, something I'm doing in me is changing
Yes.
the outcomes I wanted. Once I cleared it all out, everything changed overnight. And
Amazing.
I was like, wow. So yeah, so that's the
Wow.
difference. So now I work mentally and I use the RTT for the mental stuff. And then I work emotionally, which is the emotional alchemy. And then also I work with people setting goals so that we have these short-term, midterm, and long-term goals. Because if you have long-term goals, you have a better bank account. Basically, if you don't have long-term goals,
Yes.
you've got a very bad bank account. So I work
Yes.
the emotional, the mental, and the physical, because I think you need to target both. So that's where the results are. And then it depends on, on what somebody wants to do. Like I've had, let me see, like, so I had just in the last week, I have one client come to me and she was concerned that her marriage was going to fall apart because she had gone through a stage of burnout about 3 years ago, and she had not come right around it since then. Okay, so we've just done one session so far, but in it, she was about to have an important meeting with her husband. That's the next day. So we did this one session so that she could clear out all of her emotions, so that she'd be able to be present in the meeting. That she was, I say meeting, but it was like they were going to have a discussion about
Mm.
this thing. It was trying to decide where they're going. And like you want to be present in those without the emotional charge, so you can be really present and hold the space to have
Mm.
the conversations, to allow things to come up and to come up with solutions. So just after one session, she was able to be present for that, and they're starting to work on things and they're starting to move forward. Whereas when she came to me, she didn't even know like what was going to happen or where it was going. She was, so you can just reset a lot of these
That's
things.
amazing.
Yeah, it really, really is. And it depends on each individual. Each person is going to get a different outcome because it's totally internal and specific to where the person's at. So, in doing it, I've worked with people, they've overcome fear of drowning in a session. It really depends on the pain point that you're working with. You
Mm.
can go through, I think there's a solution to every problem. So whatever the big pain point is that somebody's working with, we can overcome that or get through it or release it. And
Mm.
then you can start doing the work to get you to where you want to go. It's not passive. Everybody, you have to take action towards the results you want, but you want to take the right action and you want to release the things that aren't helping you in your journey. It's like getting rid of old baggage. It's just weighing
Yes.
you down. You just want to get rid of it so you can make progress.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So, what would you say some of your biggest career highlights have been? And again, you probably had multiple, but what would you say stands out for you the most?
Yeah. So one of the things I'm creative, right? So I've always been able to kind of create work around. Before, what I did was I created jobs to suit my skills, right? So the last town that I was at was a rural town, it was like a frontier town. And I ended up working two different places. One was at a resort doing a lot of their marketing, and we started a a nonprofit, and we got a lot of funding for mountain bike trails, and it's really kind of put the place on the map. And it's brought a lot of people to the area to work in that area. And now they're really starting their new careers and doing the stuff that's important to them. And in the town itself, I worked on I did a real estate development for another nonprofit company, helping get a housing for workforces to come to the area. So it's really fun. What's been fun about that was all of the people that went into those houses, some of them have come along to take key roles in that town, and they're really, really moving that town forward. So they were
Oh,
the
wow.
injection. Yeah, they were the injection into that area economically, not economically so much as manpower, like brilliant
Yes.
minds working, creative minds working in a place. And now that's all starting to really click together. So even just as recently as this past week, one of the people I'd hired for the mountain bike trails, I believe, he was working with a big company. I think he's relocating there, and he's going to be working on this project that I helped to come to fruition. And then it's just really beautiful. So it's like I love that.
Wow.
That was just really dear to heart, because you want to see things make progress, right? That's really what I'm good at, helping things make progress.
Yes.
And then before that, I loved working in the city, so in New York, you can meet everyone. So when I was in real estate, I got to meet a lot of famous people. I got to meet like Lady Gaga, Sarah Jessica Parker, and all of these different things were fun. I'd have all of these people, because you're Alec Baldwin, all these different people who are crossing your radar because you're just in that space. And that's kind of fun. Not that everybody
Yes.
isn't important, but it was just like, okay, this is, you can play at any level in whatever you're putting your attention to. You just have to be willing to show up and give it your best effort, and you
Mm.
can really, really see progress. And that some of that's just a reflection of, okay, I'm doing some things, I'm doing things. This is the feedback from the universe saying, okay, yeah, you're making progress over here, you're making progress over here. And that's really, really cool. And then the last one would have been, I guess, after we opened up my first business, we got, after 3 years of opening, we were voted the top bar in the 5 borough region. And we were just,
Wow.
that was
That's
like,
amazing.
yeah, we're just small, not even a big place, a small place, but it was a lot of fun. And it was this community that we had, and it was about this really, really good exchange with the neighborhood. People came there because
Mm.
it was a community, not because really, and they would meet friends, and they would meet, it was just this wonderful place. People would come to forget about whatever challenges, but it wasn't about serving people drinks. It was about people actually coming in and having this really good exchange with them, where they're having a deep connection and you're having a deep connection with them. And then from that, they make a lot of friends, and partners, and et cetera, et cetera. So those are really the things. I think it's where you have that connection that,
Yeah, that's amazing.
yeah, then you can see change happen. Change just unfolds naturally then for everyone. And that's really
Yes,
be that catalyst, in that situation.
absolutely. So that leads me into the other skill set that you have, which is obviously you trained as a hypnotherapist, access bars, yoga, and meditation. So can you share with us more about this? And can you also share more about hypnotherapy and why and what is the technique used for? And if you could dispel the assumptions made around this, because I think some people don't really understand what hypnotherapy is,
Sure.
and they've got all these, like maybe what you see in movies, which is not necessarily accurate. If you
Right.
could kind of just elaborate on the hypnotherapy part as well, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I certainly will. So, one of the reasons I've done all of these different things is I love to feel and understand things in my body so that I can see what they're doing inside me, so I can articulate it to somebody else, the experience of what it is, what to expect, and what to know. So, even with my yoga training and the access bars and all of those things, a lot of it is really, so you want to evolve. The way I see the world is, you really a goal of really evolving the consciousness and getting your body as aligned with your highest potential. So a lot of these things, these other modalities, is okay, how can I unlock my highest potential so that when and where I'm showing up in the world is the best version of me available at that moment in time. So all of these things are tools.
Yes.
So they're tools. So I say access bars is a wonderful tool. Many people have received amazing benefits from it, for everything from, depression to alignment to just clarity in general. It's a wonderful tool. There's practitioners all over the world. It's easy to find one locally. It's an in-person thing. And then yoga was just really that yoga was really kind of what opened me up and got me much more present in my body versus out of my head and just into the physical space, because that's what you're doing, right? So you're becoming more grounded. Hypnotherapy, I first tried when I was sick, when I was part of the RTT process, which I did with somebody. And hypnotherapy is it's interesting. So one of the reasons people are quite concerned about it generally, let's say, is that about 10% of the population is highly suggestive. Okay. So if you look at this stage hypnotherapy, right, the stage hypnotherapist will have, out of say 100 people, they will be able to spot, based on how, these are people who are doing it just for show. In the audience, of the 100 people in the audience, maybe 10 will put their hand up that they want to be hypnotized. Those people are usually the highly suggestive because they enjoy this experience of being somebody else and becoming something else. Everybody
Yes.
else in the audience is going, oh my God, there's no way I'm going to put my hand up. I don't want to be that person up there where they make me do these crazy things. That's the whole idea, where we see the world not the way we see it, the way we are, not the way it is. The people who are putting up their hands, they're going like, pick me. I am game to experience this process. And they're also quite likely to be highly suggestible.
Mm.
They're in that category. And then of those people, usually the stage hypnotherapist will identify who's going to be the one who's going to go along with the show the easiest, right? Who's the least
Yes.
resistant to it. And then those are the one or two that are kept on the stage. So everybody else thinks that, oh my God, if I went up there, I would be, doing something ridiculous. And no way I'm doing that thing, right? So that explains the stage hypnotherapy. It's show on many, many levels, but we get hypnotized every single day. Like the last time somebody drove home and you can't remember what you did on the drive home, right?
Yes.
You're in a mild state of hypnosis. It's just your conscious mind has shut down and your subconscious mind is turned on.
Yes.
That's all that is. So whenever you really, really get into something, so what hypnotherapy does is we have this, our conscious mind is the gatekeeper, right? And it is the one that kind of, makes sure that everything is safe and everything is okay. It's the conscious mind. It's going to be consciously letting in and out ideas, thoughts, and beliefs. And all hypnotherapy does is it allows that conscious mind to take a break so that the subconscious mind, which records and remembers everything, has the opportunity to present whatever it is that needs to be presented. So I often describe hypnotherapy to people who are coming to me. I said, it's kind of like, if you're lying in bed and somebody walks into the room, say a friend or a family member, and you're pretending you're still asleep, but you don't want to open your eyes. You're just like, okay, I'm just going to ignore, whatever, my mother, sister, boyfriend, whatever, walking in. I'm just going to lie here with my eyes closed still because I'm not ready to wake up yet. That's what being hypnotized feels like. Not that different, except for your eyes will probably be a little bit heavier, where it doesn't feel like you're not gone to, if you need to use the bathroom, you'll be like, okay, you need to open my eyes and use the bathroom. If somebody knocks on the door, you'll open your eyes and you'll whatever. It might take you a little second to come out of it, but it's almost like that transition period between deep sleep, coming in and out of deep sleep. That's really, really what it's about. So I understand that people are concerned about suggestive things, but the truth is we're being suggested every single day with ads, with newspapers, with radio, with commercials. That's all. Most of that is actually hypnotic suggestion. So you're not only are you going in and out of hypnosis every day when you go a little bit mindless about something, you're also receiving suggestions every single day. So, that's why I would say it's important to trust the person, to feel good about the person that you're doing the work with, obviously.
Yes.
It's kind of like trust your intuition. Is this somebody that you trust to go to these places with? And you'll know, if not, look at the reviews. If you don't know, if you don't trust yourself, look at all the reviews. They'll have reviews. They'll have people talking about them. They'll have testimonials. See if they're good.
Yeah, absolutely. So a big part of your focus is preventing burnout, which is a common challenge, especially in the entrepreneurial space, and mental health and overall wellness is critically important. So can you give the listener an overview of all the techniques you apply in your coaching? I mean, maybe you've got lots, but what is the top ones that come to mind?
Yeah. So the main techniques now I use in the coaching. So we deal with things from a mental, emotional, and physical, really. So from a mental perspective, that is where I use RTT and things like that. From the emotional perspective, that means, and it depends on how most people come at, they're either very, very much left-brained or right-brained. They're very much either analytical or emotional. And we really want to get somebody right in the middle of both of those. We want a good balance between their left brain and the right brain. So if somebody's very analytical, I want to get them feeling a little bit more into their body and knowing and understanding how they feel about things, being able to read emotions, being able to become higher in their own emotional intelligence, right? So that's where the emotional work works really well for them, because it just turns on some awarenesses that they have not had. It's not to make people into emotional, blubbering, whatever. It's the absolute opposite from that. Is to be calm and clear and grounded in themselves, and then mentally being able to apply their brilliant mind to whatever. So then for the emotional aspect of people who are very, very emotional, we want to be able to release those strong emotions so that they can get calmer and clearer, and they can start to use their thinking brain a little bit more on things, so they won't be so easily triggered, and they won't be so vulnerable to other, or susceptible to emotional outbursts. Or, we want to get people either way very, very grounded and calm, balance between their left brain and right brain, their masculine and feminine, so they're really, really centered and very much in their body, present and calm, because that's really, really a very powerful place to come from. So I use both the RTT and the emotional alchemy for that. And the other thing I'm adding in, and this will be this coming month, I'm about to become a certified fingerprint analyst. And the fingerprints.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. The fingerprints actually have our soul purpose, our life challenge, our spiritual gifts, and our school of learning that we're in. And so they show these different things. One of the things I found kind of one of the bigger questions a lot of people have: what's my purpose, and what's my this, and what's my that, and especially if there's dissatisfaction around work or around where you are in life. And it's been hugely beneficial for me to do it, because it highlighted for me some of the areas that I was really, really strong in, that I maybe would have been aware of them or not, because they were natural to me. But it kind of like, oh, this is a gift that I have. Oh, okay. I mean, I knew I was a healer, and I knew there was a few other things that I knew, but then I also learned I was an innovator, and I also learned emotional mastery is my thing. So then it legitimized everything I was doing. It's like, oh, this really is my field. I can feel strong in it, so knowing that I could see it worked, and now that I know that it works. And so then that's what I do with other people. So I add that in because I find it's very, very good. It helps people ground if they know you don't always have to be working on the thing that is your sole purpose. But once you know what it is, you can start adding more of it in your life, even if it's in your free time. So you will
absolutely
get this feeling of satisfaction and also congruency, so that your inner world and outer world start to align more. And then that just feels really good every single day.
No, that's amazing. And obviously all of them work together or concurrently, I suppose, the techniques that you use. So
yeah. So once you feel aligned, it feels safe to invest your energy and interest into a project. And then you learn to listen and value yourself even more, so you no longer burn yourself out willingly, right? And as you value yourself more, when you value yourself more, you do better financially, and everything flows, and you get better results in relationships. So it just all kind of, you stop working against yourself and you start working for yourself, but not in a self-serving way necessarily. The sole purpose is usually in a bigger scope and a bigger capacity. So it's not about inflating an ego, right? It's really
not
grounding.
at all.
It's really, really grounding as to who you are, becoming more authentic, more congruent. And then from there, then you're really, really, then you can really operate well in the world.
Speaking of which, obviously we've all been through trauma to a greater or lesser degree. So over the past 3 years, due to the pandemic, how did this personally affect you, both professionally and personally? And were there techniques you applied and implemented for your clients based off your own experience? And how did this change, or how did you adapt within your own business? And was this a challenge for you?
Right. Yeah. Well, all of
I know
the
it's a lot.
well, it really in many, many ways was a pivoting point for me because of a few things. when it came on board, it stopped me traveling to New York City where I was getting treatments, right? Because the
Yes.
airline shut down and I was traveling from Maine to New York. So I no longer get treatments. And because I could no longer get treatments, my health plummeted, right? And because of
Mm,
my health plummeting, I was like also let go from one of the jobs that because of the pandemic, not so much of my health, but it was simultaneous. Because of the resort was closed down, they let like 95% of the staff go because it wasn't open really for business. So
yeah.
at that time, so all of that kind of, just unplugged me from everything that I knew in the past. So then it also set me on this, on this trajectory going forward. So knowing I'd been given a second chance, I was going to become more congruent with what I do for work. So instead of like my moonlighting was personal development, I would go home and I would be following up on all of the stuff that I'm doing now. So I was like, okay, I'm given a second chance. Um, I'm going to I'm going to do what I really know and feel, or at least I know out there that there's a part of me that's not in alignment, and I'm going to search for that, and I'm going to
Mm,
get on that path, and I'm going to follow it, because obviously working at this other model, the consumptive model, this place where you just work and deplete is not working for me. So I'm
no.
giving another chance, but let me try this path because
Yes.
this is how it was. So starting out with me as a product actually was hard initially, because it was easier for me to sell, bike trails, buildings, whatever. But, I
Yes.
still hadn't stepped into that light where I was, where I felt comfortable in the product. Now, is that imposter syndrome? Is it whatever? I don't really know. I think it's lack of experience syndrome myself, to be honest. And
Yes.
maybe lack of congruency syndrome would probably be a little bit more. But you develop that, it's like a muscle. You develop that skill and that experience, and you feel comfortable occupying that space. So I just decided to just go at it, give it my full ability, really put all of my energy into this, which is helpful for other people and helpful for myself. And
Yes.
then once I moved beyond that, getting my fingerprints analyzed was another game changer, because it gave me a validation that, okay, this isn't my imagination. This is the thing, this is, and that was really, really hugely helpful also as well. Even though I was on the path already, I was like, oh, okay, I am actually, it's feedback, right? It's a reinforcement feedback loop, which is positive. I'm heading in the
Yes.
right direction. And then, you know, coming up with the different systems that now really, really work. Also, as a result of sometimes when you're between this rock and a hard place, that's when the diamonds are made. That's when the stuff really comes out that you're meant to do. And sometimes we have to go through these processes to really
Yeah.
get down to those pressure points. Really will determine how you are and who you are. And then what you do with it is really, that's where that's really is up to you. So that's what I think it's given to all of us. It wasn't the tastiest meal to have to go through, but it's a matter of, okay,
Yeah.
how are we digesting it, and what choices are we making as a result?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, all of those things are critically important. So, just from the pandemic perspective, do you feel that it changed the trajectory of what you're doing?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I was working for somebody else. I was working as a project manager and working at the resort, doing any sort of everything from general manager to whichever, it didn't really matter at different times. Not quite general manager, but operations manager to this manager to that manager. So going from all of those things where it's a lot of output, but I wasn't really being giving what my gifts are to the world, right? So what it forced me, those were things I could do. They weren't
Yes.
things I could be.
Yeah.
Okay, so the pandemic gave me things I could be, and stepping into my own space, really, really highlighting and expanding on my natural gifts, the things that my spiritual gifts, my soul gifts, these things, and now sharing them with the world. Like, I don't know if there's a higher and best use of anything, and for each person is going to be different, obviously, what they decide to do, but that's where I am now, and that is continually ever since then. So I'm working in a totally different role as a result of it. The people I'm coming in contact with are completely different, and the whole new, clients that feel like I have a very strong connection with, that we're able to start making great progress with. And my mission is I didn't have a mission before, right? So my mission is to help create a world where people are more connected to their souls, so that we can build a better world, right? That's my
Yeah.
mission. I didn't have that before. That is now my mission. So if I can make progress with one person or two people or three people, and they can go on to make great change, it's worth it. And if
Yeah.
that's 1,000 people, better world for all of us. So it's
Yes.
really about that. So yeah, that's what the pandemic ended up being. It wasn't that pretty going into it, but I'm a totally different person. I'm doing a totally different business. I'm in a totally different country. How I work
Yes.
is completely different. It's all different.
But it's amazing though. Like you say, going through all of that, it transitions you into a better person.
Hmm.
So that leads me to, obviously you're an international best-selling author, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So was writing a book an organic process for you? And can you share with us more about your book?
Yeah, absolutely. So I really had, okay, I need to write a book in my head. Everyone's like, you should write a book. And I was like, so I was writing one book all about the ego and the soul, right? And then another friend of mine was doing this. It was a multi-author book, and it was all about entangled no more, women who have broken free from toxic relationships. And I'm like, well, I haven't been in any toxic relationships. And I was like, oh, I have with
Mm.
myself. I was in a very
Yeah.
toxic relationship with myself. And that caused me to get quite sick in the process. And that caused me to get, where I am and all of that because of how I was treating myself or not treating myself in the
Mm.
process was actually detrimental to my health and also to the health of my family, right? I was
Yeah.
more willing to deplete myself for other people than I was to pull back and do what I needed to do for myself because I didn't all the reasons we've gone through mentally, emotionally, there was different blocks, generationally, lots of different things along the way that would stop us showing up how we we're supposed to. But I
Yes.
didn't want to really do a book about me being sick because that just kind of felt kind of heavy. I didn't really want to spend the time writing that because I don't believe in investing my energy in an idea. If I'd sit down to write that, that would have been like, oh, that's kind of heavy. But I did want to share the information, and I never wanted to make a business around the health aspect of it because I think health should be free for people. That's just my own personal belief.
Oh,
I
100%.
I
I
don't
mean,
I
it
don't
shouldn't. Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to be selling people my system of getting better from something that they may, that is a big issue. So I was like, okay, this was an opportunity for me to share a lot of the components that I think contributed to my getting sick and recovery in something that was going to be distributed quite largely in the world. So I said, okay, so I can show how these toxic relationships with ourselves, how our inner working can really work against us and how we can break free from that. So that was a process on it. And I felt very good in that. I was able to gift that out to the world. And hopefully there's stuff in it that helps some people and it's accessible and it's easy and it's almost free at the time, so it's as close to it as possible with a wide distribution so that people become more aware of these things that are contributing to lots of challenges in general. So it was really, really wonderful. It became bestseller in a number of categories around the world, including in the UK and
Wow. That's
in the
amazing.
US and in Australia. Yeah, there was a great team on the launch. So it's all, collaboration is a wonderful thing. And I think the
Yes.
world that we're in at the moment is very, very much been
Individual
individual, right? And the
and
collaboration.
divided.
Right, right. But together we can do great things, and
Yes.
if we're working with this value model where the sum of the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, basically where we're getting this energy addition to what we're doing versus the consumption model, which is getting this energy subtraction each time we do something. We want to be adding to a world where we're increasing the energy and increasing the output to everyone because it works for everyone then, it's a win-win situation. So that's what
Mm.
this book was for me, and it kind of worked in so many different levels. And
That's
I'll
amazing.
add about that. Yeah.
So that leads me to the final question. So, what are the three key pieces of advice you would give to other entrepreneurs, and what legacy would you like to leave, or how would you like to be remembered? Mhm.
So as I think about that, one, some ideas have legs and they're
Yes,
born running.
yes,
And when you have one of those, work with it. It's like catching a wave and make the most of it, right? So that
yes,
some ideas are just born running. They just
yes.
are. And you just gotta, you're lucky if you get one and run with it and grow it. Some ideas are the opposite of that. And they
Mm.
just does not matter what you do to them. They might be good ideas, they just don't have legs and they're not going, and it's really good to recognize the difference. So the other thing would be careful you don't believe your own propaganda.
Oh, 100%.
And I learned that after three.
Especially the way things are currently. Wow.
Oh my God, 100%. So I spent about 3 years once trying to get a physical product to market about something that I felt was really, really important to me. And after 3 years is when I was in the States, is when I was working with the other company. As physical, it was a drink, a health drink, right around the time the kombuchas and stuff were coming out. And I did 3 years on it to get to the very end of it. Discovered two things. One, distribution was going to be really hard. And unless I had money and time, it wasn't going to happen. And I had, if I could get one, I wouldn't have the other. So I was just like, after 3 years of like a lot of time trying to get this thing going. But then on the other side of it, I was like, oh, you know what? I think I sold myself my own propaganda on this thing along the way. And that was, I don't know which was worse, but at least I realized it. But it was the end of a detailed market research that I did as part of something. And I had to prove how I was going to get it out in distribution and stuff. And I was like, I came to those two conclusions, which was so hard. I just wish,
Yeah, that's so painful too.
yeah, and I just wish I'd come to them earlier because I'd have saved myself 2 years of time. And
Yeah.
then the other thing is partnerships are a true test. It's kind of like a marriage, so choose wisely.
100%.
So, and for many people, it really, really makes sense to have a partner, but you have to think going into it for marriage or for partnership, what is the worst behavior this person is capable of, and can I live with it?
Yeah, exactly. And you really have to be brutally honest.
Be brutally honest. So if you're a spendthrift and your partner is flamboyant with the purse strings, you're going to see it in business and vice versa. Right. And it's going to create problems. So you want to get somebody that's fairly well matched with those things and with those ideas. So you want something that's reasonably harmonious. But that, I think, seeing it as, okay, what's the worst thing that this person could do? So if you're a spendthrift and they are somebody who spends easy, chances are you're going to be living with this down the road in this partnership, unless you've got really clear agreements, or unless you're controlling, the books, or vice versa. If you're somebody who likes to spend money on investing stuff and your partner really refuses to see the benefit of additional investment, then you're going to be in this challenging position. What's your work compatibility? Do you work all the time? And is your partner somebody who just shows up and saunters and shows up every now and then? That can be okay. Just know the dance that you're in so you can get it.
Yes.
And the last thing would be probably getting a product that's a good value model, so make sure that many people have said, don't try and reinvent the wheel, just do some of these things better. So we often try to make something quite complicated. And really, sometimes you can do what's already there, but just do it better in some of the established fields, be it if it's your coach, be it, health, relationships, finances. They're the three models that most people want. You can do a product, one of those things, niche it down and do it better. But don't try and create the, Wally's best way to waffle or whatever. Unless there's a market for it. It's like, it might sound cool, but is there a market for it? And are you going to be making something brand new? And does it need a whole different machine and delivery system? Now, there's exceptions. Always there's exceptions. And there's the early adapters, and there's the people who can get there quicker. But those would be the main things, I think.
Yes.
And do the market research, niche down, do your market research.
Yeah, absolutely. And what legacy would you like to leave?
So with it, a lot of the work that I'm doing right now is very, very much kind of around the soul related work and making the body as activated as possible and as clear as possible. This is part of the work that I'm here to do, and this is part of my reason for doing it. So how I do that with people, I do plan, I will be speaking later on in the year at some different things, and I will be making inroads in those things, and then we'll see. Life is, the destination is not determined. As many people as I can impact along the way, be that 1,000 people who go on and do amazing things, and that could be having an amazing life at home for their family, so their family can go on to do amazing things. It can be, or it can be people who actually can go on and actually on world stages and do amazing things. The amazing thing, it does not matter, but to help any one person have developed an aspect of them that wasn't available before, that they're now making success, that makes me so happy. I hear from people all the time that even before I started doing this work, that they'll come back to me like, oh, by the way, I'm making this transition, this change because of the work that we did. And that makes me so happy. So I'll just continue doing that and leaning in and discovering I am a an explorer, so I like to discover. So I know that my path will take me doing additional work with, you know, earthwork and with work with people in general and places, just to again help clear as much of our energy individually and collectively, so that we are allow ourselves as a world to get to a better place. And you know, where we're all making progress, because I think that's important. And also that starts with clearing out what's inside of us. So if I can make, that's really where I am for that's really
Yes.
my journey now, and that's where I'm going. So more and more of that.
Amazing. So if people would like to connect with you, Ailish, what are the best platforms to do so?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I have a website. It's ailish.com. That's AILISH.com. And there is a pop-up there. If anyone wants to get on my mailing list, please do. I'd love to. I don't mail all the time, but I do 2 to 3 times a week, depending on what's going on. I'm on Instagram at ailish.keating. That's AILISH.Keating, Keating. And on Facebook, I'm Ailish E. Keating, a middle initial E. So any of those, and just reach out to me. I'm very, I love to connect with
You're a
people.
very approachable person, so it's
Thanks.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And if anyone wants to schedule a free 30-minute consultation, just go to ailish.com/booking. And there's a timetable and calendar there. And we'll chat for 30 minutes. And if I'm able to give you some insights, I will. And if not, I'll tell you where, if I were you, what I would do next.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we can have you back in the future to see where you are in your journey.
I would appreciate that, and I look forward to it. Thanks, Karen.
Thanks so much.
And thank you for having me on and chatting. It's been wonderful to get to know you and see the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much.